Nature can be beautiful, but it can also be so horrific that it'll make you never want to step foot outside ever again. From the most terrible aberrations the natural world can muster to things that just shouldn't be, it's time to take a look at some of the creepiest things found in nature. Spider tent, spider tent. My wife's always pushing me to go camping, but why the heck would I want to do that? Damn sheets, no Wi-Fi, and worst of all, creepy crawlies. You think I'm a wuss? Take a look at this 2020 clip from Tak, Thailand, and see what the Ranan Ak found when they woke up in the middle of the night.
เต็มเลยครับผม
Hundreds of harvestmen, also unsettlingly known as daddy longlegs, were crawling all over the surface of the tent. Oh god, that's horrible. Daddy longlegs lack venom and aren't known to bite if that helps you sleep at all. No one's quite sure why these harvestmen cluster together. It could be to deter predators, regulate temperature, or for mating. The thought of bugs getting it on while I'm trying to sleep only makes this entire thing worse. The insect nastiness doesn't stop there though. In 2024, tour guide Yang Xiaozhong was strolling through Shai Pa National Park in Taiwan, and all was going well until he noticed that ground ahead of him seemed to be moving. What Yang saw was millions of millipedes crawling along the ground. He believed that the mass was nearly 10 feet wide and over 50 yards in length. Never in his 11 years as a guide had he seen anything like it before. If I were him that day, that would have been my last. The millipede migration may have been triggered by several earthquakes that hit the area a few days prior. But as weird as it seems, a similar phenomenon has been observed over in Japan. More than once. In 1920, train operators recorded blankets of millipedes covering the tracks that were so humongous they brought trains to a halt. The phenomenon happens in areas surrounding mountain forests roughly once every 8 years. These millipedes have an unusually long 8-year life cycle that requires them to search for new feeding grounds once they've eaten all they can at their birthplace. At the following site, they eat, mate, lay new eggs, and die. Well, I guess that's goodbye Millipede Road. All Hollow. There's nothing like wandering through an ancient forest and hearing the wind weave through those towering trees. It gives me chills every time. But have you ever wondered what's inside these giants? In March 2024, social media explorers, travel slayers, decided to take a look inside a tree they claimed to be 1,000 years old. That's what I call a deep, dark wood. The whereabouts of this tree is a mystery, however. Hollow trees aren't unusual. As a tree ages, its center can die, where it's then eaten away by fungi. This is all safe for the tree since the fungi doesn't reach the living sapwood. What isn't so safe are the creatures that can lurk inside a tree. From 2014 to 2016, an outbreak of the Ebola virus devastated West Africa. A 2014 study revealed that in the Guinean village of Malayandu, there was a hollow tree where children played. Little did they know that this tree was home to Angolan free-tailed bats. While harmless by themselves, these bats may have carried the deadly disease, with Malayandu the first to be infected in the 2014 outbreak. So next time you think about crawling into a hollow tree, beware of what lurks within. A cackling conundrum. Have you ever been alone outside and heard a call only to look around and see nothing there? For the people living on the Umatilla Reservation in Oregon in 2013, that was a nightly reality. Over 120 residents reported hearing a strange call like cackling laughter in the middle of the night. These unearthly cries echoed outside people's homes and woke them from their sleep. One person even claimed their dog was so terrified it refused to go outside. Skeptics have dismissed these claims, attributing the sound to foxes, cougars, or coyotes. Yet many residents insisted they had never heard anything like it before. One man even made a video of himself listening to the cries. Since officials were unable to identify any animal responsible for the sound, some have speculated that a supernatural creature might be to blame. There are even rumors that Bigfoot himself might be skulking around in a swamp not far from the reservation. Stories of the Sasquatch are not to be taken lightly, with a tribal leader of the area maintaining that he once found a massive 18-inch long footprint whilst hunting in the Blue Mountains just over 100 miles from Umatilla. What do you think is making these cries? Foxes? Bigfoot? Me going outside to touch grass after editing a video for 48 hours straight? Let me know in the comments. Wretch on the beach. If you watch my videos, you know that plenty of wacky stuff washes up on our beaches. Take for example this photo of what people claim are crinoid fossils. Jeez, those things look just like the robots that go around harvesting humanity in the Matrix. In reality, crinoids are marine animals that have been around since the Paleozoic era, over 500 million years ago. Crinoids are echinoderms, belonging to the same family as sea stars, sea urchins, and sea cucumbers. Echinoderms have skin made of calcite, a tough calcium material, which is why their fossils are so weirdly well preserved. But discoveries don't have to be rock solid to creep you out. Back in 2017, a hulking thing washed up on Blurry Port in Carmarthenshire, Wales. It was large, covered in wriggling worm-like creatures, and was ominously dubbed the Beast of Bury Port. But here comes our old friend Buzzkill Man, because this isn't a beast at all. It's not even technically alive. It was actually a large piece of driftwood covered in gooseneck barnacles. These are crustaceans that attach themselves to rocks, ships, or pretty much anything adrift at sea. They have long, fleshy-backed stems that look like necks, hence the name. If these barnacles had been alive, the residents of Buryport could have made a tidy sum. Gooseneck barnacles are considered a delicacy in some parts of the world and can fetch about $50 per pound. Although I think just setting your eyes on this creepy sea nightmare costs you much more than that. Depends on how much you value your sanity, I guess. Frog got your tongue? Back in 1992 in Ontario, Canada, high school student Deidre was in her garden minding her own business when she saw a frog with its eyes closed. Curious, she reached down and picked it up. Strangely, it didn't open its eyes. On closer inspection, she saw something inside its mouth, and that something stared back at her. To her shock, she realized that the frog's eyes were fused to the roof of its mouth. The eyes were still functional, but only worked when the frog's mouth was open. Deidre besotted with her new pet, named it Gollum after Tolkien's ghoulish character. Makes sense, I guess. While cases like Gollum are rare, another googly-eyed mouse frog was reported in 2016. An image of this frog circulated online with claims that it was mutated by a parasite. This explanation isn't entirely far-fetched, as the parasite Ribeiroi ondatre can enter a tadpole system and cause it to grow additional, albeit deformed legs. Although this doesn't explain the eyes. Some frogs retract their eyes into their mouths when they eat to help them swallow. In Gollum's case, the palate skin was incorporated into the eyes themselves, possibly due to the retinas growing down towards the mouth by accident. Talk about eating with your eyes. Fishing for nightmares. All this stuff is putting me on edge. Let's take a calming fishing trip out to the sea. Just us and the waves. Surely nothing could be that scary out there, right? Well, in 2017, Matt Mertz thought the same thing when he went fishing off the coast of Santa Cruz, California. He caught a 27-inch lingcod, a pretty decent catch, but the fisherman noticed something in the fish's mouth. Something squishy. Peering past its serrated fangs, he saw a creature lodged in its throat, an octopus. That was, of course, before the octopus's tentacles lashed out. Nah, I'm just kidding. Note that last bit, though. Seeing it stuck down there must have been a surprise. Mertz believes the lingcod must have eaten the octopus just before it was caught. It's no secret that a lingcod's favorite food is small octopi. Perhaps this lingcod should have tried one just a little bit smaller. Voyaging across the internet, another very odd catch has been making the rounds: a mutated three-eyed fish. Netizens claim that this creature was caught off the coast of Greenland, though I can't say this is true for sure. The only thing people are concerned with is comparing it to Blinky from The Simpsons. But as freaky as a three-eyed fish may be, it's nothing compared to this next catch. In 2021, a fisherman from Sashan, South Gyeongsang Province, Japan, hauled up a creature like no other. While octopus fishing, the crew were about to release their catch back into the water when they noticed one was very different from the others, and not in a good way, because it had 32 legs. Watch out for that guy, he's well armed. If you thought that was impressive, in 1998 an octopus was found with a mind-boggling 96 tentacles. This remarkable specimen, weighing 7 pounds and measuring 3 feet, was stored at the Shima Marineland Aquarium, and a photo of it went viral in 2021. So what's going on with all these cephalopods? When an octopus loses a tentacle, usually due to a predator, it can regrow. However, factors like infection or genetic mutation can affect their regrowth. Pollution in the water can damage an animal's DNA, leading to these mutants. Great! Another reason not to go swimming. Underwater what's-its. In 2022, after a day of snorkeling in Port Phillip Bay on the southeastern coast of Australia, swimmers approached the shallower waters near the coast, where they saw these strange, creepy nodules, each one about 6 feet wide, spread along the floor. At first glance, you'd think they're alien eggs ready to hatch some sort of flesh-devouring offspring, but I'm afraid not. These are erosion mitigation units, or EMUs, made from a blend of concrete and oyster shells. They were manufactured by Reef Design Lab, a Melbourne studio specializing in coastal solutions. Stretching nearly 200 feet, these 46 EMUs form a protective barrier along the Port Phillip shore. While they look horrifying in ways I can't quite describe, they serve a very important purpose: to help reduce coastal erosion and provide homes for sea creatures. The intentionally rough surfaces attract reef-building species such as mussels and oysters. Tunnels and crevices shelter fish, octopuses, and crustaceans from hungry predators, and the nodule surfaces also offer a place for sponges and coral to cling and grow on. Now that's what I call a beach body. I want my mummy. We've all dreamed of discovering buried treasure, prehistoric fossils, or ancient artifacts. In 1934, Wyoming, Cecil Maine, and Frank Carr were hoping for the same thing, except they got more than they'd bargained for. They began their search like any good archaeologist by blowing up part of the San Pedro Mountains. The blast opened up a cave, and on entering, they saw something set in the dark. It was a small, wizened figure about 6.5 inches tall, with protruding eyes, dried brown skin, and a misshapen head. A mummy! Maine and Carr seized the oddity and did what any sensible pair would do: sold it. After which it ended up as a sideshow attraction. Some believe that the mummy was one of the little people of Nimerigar of Shoshone mythology, who are believed to have attacked the indigenous people with tiny bows and poisoned darts. I'm afraid this idea can be put to rest here, though. Physical anthropologist George Gill from the University of Wyoming believes that the mummy was likely an infant suffering from anencephaly, a fatal defect that means a fetus doesn't develop major portions of the brain. As for the mummy's whereabouts today, its frequent change of ownership meant that it was lost sometime in the 1950s. People are still hunting for it to this day. In 2005, John Adolphi, owner of the Lost World Museum, a New York museum dedicated to creationism, offered a $10,000 reward for the mummy. He believed that its discovery could disprove evolution. Unfortunately for Adolphi, it remains lost to this day. Wherever the mummy is now, I hope it can rest in peace. Cobweb conifers. In 2010, Pakistan was struck by devastating floods. More than a fifth of the country was underwater, impacting the lives of 20 million people. Amidst the tragedy, those in the Sindh region noticed something odd in the trees. The branches of the trees were enveloped in, could it be cobwebs? The floodwaters took 6 months to recede, and during that time, millions of spiders who'd sought refuge in the trees had transformed them into huge cocoons. Nothing like this had ever been seen before in the region, and for many this site seemed like something from the lowest pits of hell. Well, you shouldn't be so quick to judge. Areas with these spider-covered trees had much lower cases of malaria, since spiders prey on disease-spreading mosquitoes that proliferate in stagnant water. I made a whole video called Why You'd Run Away from This Tree, which delved into this phenomenon in more detail, so be sure to check it out if you want to learn more. Though I imagine the arachnophobes might not be joining us. Coral calamity. Imagine traipsing through the desert of Al-Ula in Saudi Arabia with the sun so hot you feel woozy and delirious. In the distance, you see something. Stepping closer, it looks like a growth of some kind covered in pustules. Are you imagining things? Nope, not at all. This is Coral Alchemy 1, an installation created in 2022 by artist Shahzad Dawood. But what's Coral doing in the desert? Well, Dawood was inspired to make this after learning that 10 million years ago, Al-Ula was part of what became the Red Sea, with coral alchemy evoking the ancient marine life that once lived there. This creation measures about 7 feet long, 8.5 feet tall, and 11.5 feet wide, making it bigger than a super king-size bed. Crafted from cast resin, metal, and thermochromatic paint, the sculpture's colors actually change according to the temperature. My face is exactly the same, down to the pustules. Small world. Sea Giant. For all you Greek mythology nerds out there, the story of Atlas probably rings a bell. He was a titan doomed to hold up the heavens and the earth for all eternity. But that's just an old story, right? Well, take a dive into the waters of Nassau, Bahamas, and it'll seem disturbingly real. What in the world is that colossus? It's the Ocean Atlas, a monumental statue measuring just under 16.5 feet long that weighs over 66 tons. That's the same as 10 African elephants. Atlas is so large it had to be assembled piece by piece and holds the record for the largest figurative sculpture to be displayed underwater. A nice niche record there. The piece was installed in 2014 and created by Jason DeCaires Taylor, who aimed to draw attention to the existential threats facing the ocean. The sculpture depicts a young Bahamian girl holding up the weight of the sea. Her burden serves as a reminder of humanity's responsibility towards our environment. That's lovely, but still, I wouldn't want to come across this thing if I was swimming. The Holy Ghost. We're not done with scary sea giants just yet. And what's scarier than Jesus Christ? Sorry to use the Lord's name in vain, but it really is Jesus Christ. While we're used to seeing the Son of God in our churches, it's something else to see him encrusted in barnacles like he's a crew member of the Flying Dutchman. This is Cristo dagli Abissi, or Christ of the Abyss, to give it its English name. Standing at 8 feet tall, this bronze statue was created by sculptor Guido Galletti and stands arms outstretched some 55 feet under the Mediterranean Sea, just off the coast of San Frutuoso, and has since 1954. The artwork pays homage to Dario Gonzatti, the first Italian to use scuba gear. Despite this sculpture being an unholy terror, which is kind of ironic, people decided to replicate the statue with 2 other Christ of the Abyss replicas, one appearing on the coastline of St. George's, Grenada in 1961, and another 9 feet tall in Coral Reef State Park, Key Largo. Diving around these things would certainly be an experience, a real come-to-Jesus moment. Between drowned Jesus and the Ocean Atlas, which would you least like to encounter under the waves? Let me know down in the comments, and while you're down there, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. All done? Great. Now what have we got next? Sting in the tail. I don't have time to narrate all these scripts. I've got a list of chores a mile long. First, I'll clear out the garage. I've got magazines and junk lying all over here. Bear with me, I just need to... Holy jeez, what is that? That right there is a creepy face sculpture made even creepier by a hornet's nest that makes it look like it's got some sort of horrifically bloated torso. And I thought hornets were bad enough. It seems these stinging bugs are getting creative. These wasps made an nest over floodlights. It looks like some sort of cryptid. Wasps make their nests from paper mache made from wood that they chew down into moist pulp. Then they spit this out and shape the gunk with their mandibles and antennae. Left to their own devices, their nests can reach gigantic proportions. Just look at the sheer size of the nest this poor pest controller found. Oh, hell no. On second thought, I think I'll let my wife clean out the garage. Shoot your yacht. Way back in 2012, near King George Island, far from any human eyes, a ghostly ship lurked beneath the sea. In its past life, the ship was the Marcin Femme, a 76-foot Brazilian yacht built for expeditions. Unfortunately, one adventure would be its last. In 2012, 4 men were on board the ship voyaging to film a documentary. However, winds and waves blew up around them and the yacht became trapped in ice. The men radioed for help and were eventually rescued by the Chilean naval base in Antarctica. The same can't be said for the Marcin Femme. Over time, the yacht was crushed by the ice, leading it to sink and rot under 30 feet of water. However, the ship's demise wasn't so permanent. 1 year later, it was dredged up and towed back to dry land. I guess now only the ghost of that yacht remains in that cold, watery grave. Doll face. When I'm feeling low, nothing perks me up more than watching Toy Story. There's something about seeing Woody, Buzz, and all the other characters that brings me absolute joy. Wouldn't it be great if all the Toy Story characters existed in real life? Maybe even the toy sadistic Sid made, like Macho Duck, Fishing Rod Legs, and the baby-headed Crep. Oh god, no, I take it back. The picture of this abomination is believed to have been taken on the Pacific's Pitcairn Islands, showing what may be a young coconut crab wearing a baby doll's head as a shell. Coconut crabs, a relative of the hermit crabs, swap their shells as they grow to protect their vulnerable abdomens. They can reach over 3 feet long, tear open coconut husks, and are strong enough to lift up to 66 pounds. That's as much as a 10-year-old child. These things are bad enough without the doll's head. As populations of crustaceans dwindle due to climate change and pollution, there's fewer shells for hermit crabs. Plus, light-fingered tourists often steal shells from beaches as souvenirs. Consequently, crabs may have to look to garbage like this doll's head to protect themselves as viable shells become less common. I don't know what's scarier, the doll-head crab or our ongoing war on the environment. Silence will fall. If you're ever driving along Highway 5 in Suomussalmi, Finland, be sure to keep an eye out for a large open field. You'll know it when you see it because there'll be thousands of people standing perfectly still. These are the Hiljanen Kansa. That's silent people in English. Despite the name, these things are actually scarecrows with heads made of peat, straw for hair, and colorful rags draped over their skinny wooden frames. As you wander amongst these lifeless folks with their faceless faces staring at you, the eeriness becomes palpable. The creation of artist Reijo Kela, who made them in 1988 because, well, I've got no idea. No one does. Kela has never given an explanation as to what the silent people represent. Some speculate they could be a memorial to those who have become lost, whether soldiers in battle or ordinary people. Whatever their inspiration was, I hate it. I hate it so much. I spy a spire. In the winter, Lake Rasia in southern Tyrol, Italy, freezes over with a layer of ice so thick it can support people's weight. If you want to feel the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, wait until it gets dark and wander over the ice. Eventually, you'll find the Spectre, the Rasia Steeple. It looks like something out of a fairy tale. A dark fairy tale. The steeple is actually part of a 14th century church, a remnant of Curan, a village that once stood in Lake Rasia's place. All was well in Curan until 1950, when the government built a hydroelectric dam. Despite protests from the villagers, 2 nearby lakes were merged, flooding Curan. Over 160 homes were lost to the water, and the villagers were forced to move. All that was left is the spire that stands above the water. Well, that place is definitely haunted. Stony expressions. We all crave companionship, it's what makes us human, but there's some company that I absolutely do not want to keep. For example, that of the sculptures that Paprikala Sculpture Park in Finland. This park is home to over 560 concrete statues, each one individually created by artist Veijo Runkinen between the 1960s and 2010. His creations are certainly something to behold. Stood amongst the lush forestry, they stand in odd poses, stare with sunken eyes, and smile grimly. Some even have mouths full of human teeth. During his life, Runkinen was something of a recluse, though he would never try and shoo away people who came to admire his work. As his reputation grew, people urged him to exhibit his work away from his garden, but he always refused. Following his death in 2010, the land was bought by a businessman who kept the creepy attraction open, and you can visit the garden right now. Though you can count me out. While I may not want to be friends with them, they might get on with the silent people. Which creepy occurrence unsettled you the most? Do you have any scary finds of your own? Let me know down in the comments, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.